You are listening to Insurance Untangled podcast, where we explore the various challenges faced by dental practices due to their reliance on insurance. In this podcast, we dive deep into the issues surrounding dental insurance dependence and offer practical solutions and strategies for reducing your reliance on insurance. Join us as we interview industry experts, share success stories, and provide valuable insights to help you take control of your practice's financial future.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Navigating Dental Insurance Podcast and the Insurance Untangled Podcast. My name is Ben Tuinei, and I'm one of the co-hosts on both of these podcasts. And as you know, we've sort of created these podcasts to help doctors that are in the thick of the mess of dealing with insurance these days. Today, I have my good friend Tessina as a co-host with me today. Tessina, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It seems like the listeners want to hear from you more than anybody else. So we'll honor their request by continuing to have you kind of share and impart your knowledge. So today, we sort of are running into this issue of practices that are getting a consistent amount of denials on certain procedures. Last week, we came across a situation for an endodontist in Louisville, Kentucky, but this is sort of a common story that you see across the country. He's an endodontist. He gets paid by insurance carriers on initial root canals, but there's one insurance carrier in particular, and to avoid the repeated cease and desist letters that we get from insurances, we won't mention their name. I really want to, because this is an insurance carrier that we really want to push back hard on. Y'all know who it is. But this insurance carrier there's coverage for retreats for this client, but for the patients, that is. But they get denied 100% of the time. So the practice has to go through the appeal process to even get a retreat. And then the insurance company still doesn't pay. They don't answer phones. They don't respond to repeated claim submissions. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm just going to let Tessina, I'm going to sort of guide this discussion from the perspective of asking questions that the listeners have on their mind. But Tessina is going to sort of explain and provide some education on how we want to go about these things. So with that situation, Tessina, let's use that endo example. Initial root canals getting paid, retreats not. What would you recommend after this practice now knows this is a pattern and it's not cool because it's happening all the time? Can you walk us through the very first step that you would take to at least explore an appeal process for something like this?
Yes, definitely. So first step always goes back to a good breakdown of benefits for me. Not just asking if this service and this consideration it's a retreat, not just asking if it's covered, but what the exclusions and limitations are. They may have in their contract built in that they have an exclusion that if you do I always tell people on a rainy day, if you do it on a rainy day, then it's not covered. But other than that, we cover it. And that's their way of saying it's not covered, but we want to make you honor the contracted rate. Because again, if it's technically a covered service being denied due to an exclusion or limitation, you're required to give the contracted rate. So this is their way of saying, this is really not a covered service we want to pay for ever. So we're going to hide an exclusion in here. So if you know about that ahead of time, sometimes there are some things you can do to make sure you actually meet those requirements and you're not within that exclusion and limitation. Otherwise, if that is the only time that procedure is done is within those exclusions and limitations, you know that they're not going to pay for it. And then you know to prepare the patient. And I tell my patients that they have an exclusion, that this retreat is not done on a rainy day. And guess what? It's raining today.
Got it. Yeah. So follow-up question to that, Tessina. That's actually really good advice. I'm assuming you would perform this during the verification call, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What specifically are you for endo? Let's say it's endo. They do typical endo, right? Just root canals, retreats, things in the endo category. What sort of questions would you be asking when you're either on the phone or going on the portals to find benefit information? So you said frequency, right?
Yep. Frequency, but specifically exclusions and limitations.
Okay.
That is specifically what you want to ask for if you're on the phone with them. If you're on the website, look for the handbook, the dentist handbook, especially in regards to this insurance that we're not naming, that shall remain nameless. That website always has a handbook. And for this insurance that we're not naming, there's a different one for each state. So make sure you're on the correct website for your state and using the correct dentist handbook. In that handbook, you can search that handbook for your retreat code or whatever code it is and find those hidden exclusions and limitations. When it's in the contract, we have very little wiggle room for using. My next favorite spot would be the insurance commissioner. But before that, we have to find out what's written into their contract. And if it is abiding by their contract and you have signed their contract as an in-network provider, you're agreeing to those exclusions.
Got it. So before we go to the insurance commissioner, I've heard from you in the past that going through this first step is important, right? In fact,
yes.
I heard from you that the insurance commissioners want you to do at least one appeal.
Yes.
And if it gets denied, then you can go to the insurance commissioner. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's a fair request. The insurance commissioner is just asking us to do our work, to do our side of it, make sure that we're following within those contract guidelines and that we have attempted to appeal it once. So we've attempted to notify the insurance company of their diligent act that we believe is, their, what is it? Not diligent. They're, what's my word, Ben? They're wrongful denial. So if we feel like they were wrongfully denying it, we do need to bring it to their attention, say, this is why we think this was wrong, and give them an opportunity to correct it. So if they don't correct it, then we have grounds. If we've already checked all the other boxes, now we have grounds for a complaint.
Got it. And my apologies for not responding quickly when you're finding words there, because I'm still at 42.3% capacity with coming back from the flu.
That's okay. Usually I'm good with my words, but sometimes they're just gone. I'm like, where did my word go? I lost it.
The same way. But I understand what you're saying here. So that's good. The idea that, hey, after all that you can do, then come to us. That's what the insurance commissioner is saying, right? Well, not after all you can do. Is like, you have to at least try once, right? You have to at least give us a tool to help you. And the denial for your first appeal would help the insurance commissioner. So for those of you listening to that, don't get frustrated with that. It's not very difficult to submit for an appeal. But most practices, when they get a subsequent denial, they're appealing on their own again, and then again, and then again.
Yes.
So the insurance company says, we're never going to pay for this, right? And then the practice gives up. Before we go to the insurance commissioner on this particular matter, one question that has come up last year when one of the listeners presented a question surrounding this issue is, so if we see a pattern that these insurance companies are consistently denying a certain treatment category that should be covered, is it a good idea to pre-auth those? Would it pre-auth?
No.
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of pre-auths. In general, I think that is asking permission to the insurance company to cover a service rather than saying this is a covered service, it required treatment, and therefore it should be paid, right? So a whole different tactic there. There are definitely some good situations to do a pre-auth in, but because you're seeing a recurring denial, that is not an indicator that would need to be a pre-authorization. Again, we're just showing them that we are accepting their denials and letting them run the game, run the show, and saying like, hey, we know that sometimes you don't like to cover these. Is this going to be one of those times or not? Instead of saying, this is a covered service, we followed your guidelines, time to pay it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna sort of chime in on giving my version of the answer for the same question. Should we do a pre-auth? The listeners, I hope you appreciate this, because Tessa and our opinion on this is different, but it's for valid reasons. And Tessina's recommendation is actually correct. In my opinion, it is bulletproof correct. Don't do pre-authorizations if you know exactly how Tessina uses the insurance commissioner, because when you go through the insurance commissioner route, which we'll talk about here in a second, you tend to find that the advocacy is so much more powerful than the pre-authorization route. Now let's talk about the pre-authorization route. So there are many practices that do this. And you'll see here why Tessina is advising not to do this, because her way, in my opinion, is better. I'll concede to that. But we do have a lot of offices that don't have time to figure out the insurance commissioner route or call them, right? So they're like, well, what other solutions can we do? So there have been some practices that have done pre-authorizations in California, that is. We'll start with the state of California. In California, they do the pre-authorization, the claim gets denied, but the pre-auth says approved, right? It says it says approved, this is how the claim would be processed, but this is not a guarantee of benefits. Of course, that's written so that if the patient has maxed out their benefits, it's not misleading to give them pre-authorization that they're expecting to get covered when in fact they don't have benefits covered, right? But in California, and to the best of my knowledge and talking to most of the state regulators, there's a law called the Knox-Keene Act. And the Knox-Keene Act indicates that a pre-authorization is a pre-approval. So when Tessina mentioned that when you submit for a pre-authorization, it's almost like you're asking the insurance carrier for permission to do treatment. Fortunately, the laws have changed. That statement that Tessina said, for the most part, is an opportunity for insurance to be proactive, to get prepared to deny a claim, right? that could very well be, because they're getting information from you beforehand, right? Before the treatment is done. And I have seen evidence that sometimes does occur. But because of that Knox-Keene Act, it is starting to reverse the dynamic and the trends of pre-authorizations to where a lot of the listeners have said, all I did was submit the pre-auth to the insurance carrier, and then that kind of buttoned things up in terms of them paying for the claim. But it took time. It took a lot longer than going the insurance commissioner route for that particular method to work. So if you think about it, yeah, pre-authorizations are showing, especially in states like California that have a law, they're showing to be effective, but it is so much more administration. It's a lot more administration than if you use Tessina's route, which let's dive into that right now, Tessina. Anything else you want to say about, the pre-auth? So they do tend to help in not all states, certain states, but it's just very, very much cumbersome in terms of administration. Your team members are going to spend a lot more time doing that route. Any comments on that before we move on?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the other concern with that is that approval, let's say you get a fee increase and that approval was done before your fees were increased. If they pay on that pre-authorization, you're getting paid at the old lower rates, even though you've done them during the time of your increased rates. So they will tie any old fees that they can to that. So it can backfire a little here and there, but at least you got payment. So some offices are like, hey, I got payment. I'm just happy to get anything. So there is a time and a place for it. I have seen that if they give you an approval on a pre-authorization and then deny the claim, it is a lot easier to get that now paid because you have proof that they had given you a pre-approval. So that can be helpful, but again, a lot longer of a process. And what are we training the insurance company on? We're training them that we're playing this kind of game with them. And you could be tied to old lower fees and some of those pre-auths instead of using the insurance commissioner, taking back that power and getting paid on your current increased fees, hopefully. Yes, to dive into using the insurance commissioner. So we're saying that first step, you dot your I's, you cross your T's, you make sure you've done everything correctly and that service should be paid. Now, when you go to the insurance commissioner, you have a case. And not just with that one retreat denial, you're going to send all of those denials over to the insurance commissioner. When we see these patterns that you're seeing, the insurance commissioner needs to see them as well. And you have to point out and ask them to see the pattern with you of these constant denials. One office can do it alone if you have a lot of these patterns that you're seeing. But when it's just one office, the commissioner is wondering if this is a problem of the office, not a problem of the insurance company. So to make sure that the other providers in your area are also having the same problem and also reporting it the same way, this allows the insurance commissioner to see that the pattern is on the side of the insurance company and not at fault of one office's billing practices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is huge because, doctors they attend study clubs, they have friends, they're probably dentists are very active in terms of networking. And mainly because they're required to take CE to renew their licenses when, every 2 years or so, or can't remember how long licenses last these days, but for that reason, you definitely want to collaborate with your other colleagues in the same communities. But Tessina is correct, is you can advocate for yourself, but you just have to have your documentation all put together that's easy for the insurance commissioner to read. How long does it typically take, Tessina? The moment the insurance commissioner says, yeah, we'll take this case on, we'll take a look at it, how long does it typically take for them to do their review?
Yeah, it depends on each state, and within each state, how burdened the insurance commissioner is. In the beginning, it was really easy. Within 2 weeks for me, we were getting payments of these claims and at the beginning, I was just like every other office where it would take me a year to get payment. And 5 appeals and 10 appeals. And so when I started using the commissioner and it took 2 weeks, I was blown away. And then I started doing that 1 appeal and commissioner. And it was so much faster than any other appeals method I've ever tried. It was so amazing. So now, because of my efforts of teaching offices how to use the insurance commissioner, they're really backed up. They're really behind. They're not staffed for what they weren't prepared for what I was bringing. And it can take a month. It can take a month to 2 months. But I am assured that they're going to get it resolved and that payment is coming. I don't have to call on it every week. I don't have to fight and argue with anybody. I know that it's in good hands and I just patiently wait.
Yeah, that's good advice, because here in Utah, you've done a great job at getting doctors to use the insurance commissioner. But all the other states that are out there, their insurance commissioners have plenty of time. We're the only state in the country that our insurance commissioner is as busy on dental related issues compared to all other states, including California, Texas, and New York, who have a larger presence of dentists. We're the busiest. So the goal is to sort of use the insurance commissioner more effectively. So I highly recommend that if you're in this mix of dealing with constant denials, what I learned from Tessina is that once you sort of have these issues button up with the insurance commissioner and you're repeatedly using the insurance commissioner to fight insurance for your practice, does that have an impact on a reduction of denials and a reduction of abuse from insurance carriers? And Tessina's nodding her head and saying, yes. Can you speak to that for a second here? As sort of a side benefit, other than getting our claims paid, how does this help from a long-term abuse perspective, standard abuse perspective, when we're dealing with insurance from a long-term perspective?
Yeah. So definitely it's going to be a reduction in denials, not even just for your office sometimes. I have seen where they have been, if they're seeing this repeat offense, where it's a trend of these denials, they will actually run an investigation and go and tell that insurance company to knock it off for their entire state. So insurance commissioners per state, they only have rules for their state. They have the ability to tell that insurance provider that they cannot sell insurance plans in that state anymore. This would be detrimental to a company. They don't want this. So they want to play ball. They have to play ball with the insurance commissioner or they're kicked out of the state. But well before that, the insurance commissioner will just give them a fine, tell them to clean up their act, and they can stay. So again, when we are reporting something like a trend, not only is it less denials for your office, my number one rule is get your office on their whistleblowing list. As long as you are notifying them and reporting them, they're going to back off of you because they can keep doing it to everybody else as long as they don't get told to stop. So if you are the only office reporting, by all means, keep doing it. At least they'll back off of you. Now, if you get your whole community involved, they're going to see these trends and they're going to tell this insurance company that they have to stop automatically denying all retreats or they're going to be fined. That is not allowed for them to have an automatic flag for based on procedure. Not based on what the office is submitting. And that's what it sounds exactly is happening with these retreats. It's flagged in their system. As soon as they see it, it just gets pushed for a denial. If we can get an investigation run, the commissioner's office will find that flag and they will tell this company to remove it. So again, you're not just benefiting yourself or the 3 offices that are involved in this, the entire state would benefit.
That's awesome. As a consistent trend of messages that I hear around the country from practices and administrators that use your same approach is that long-term, it does lessen the abuse, the denials from insurance carriers. And subsequently, what that does for a practice is it reduces your overhead. It reduces the unnecessary payroll dollars that are spent on administration issues that you could easily resolve through the insurance commissioner and have a long-term fix, So Tessina, this is amazing. I want to share your contact information with our listeners so that if they have questions about this, I highly recommend retaining Tessina for anything as it pertains to coaching with insurance, denials, you name it, right? Tessina is a pretty good expert there. What's the best email that listeners can get a hold of you if they have questions about this?
Yeah, it is tessinabarney@gmail.com. It's just TESSINABARNEY@gmail.com. I know was that long? Is it long?
That's good. I'll post that in the show notes. And then Tessina's company's website is verusdental.com. That's VERUS dental.com. And we'll have that in the show notes for listeners that are interested in anything that Tessina provides as a service. Tessina, thank you for being with us today. This has been an amazing episode. Really appreciate it. And to our listeners, we want to thank you for joining us today on another amazing episode. If you like this, share this with your team, social media, other doctors that are out there. Give us some love with some 5-star reviews that'll help other doctors find our content. Don't forget to check out our websites. We have 2 websites, sayno2ppos.com and then, not Verus Dental, it's insurancentangled.com. That'll go over the quarterly webinars as well as all the other episodes that we've published in the past. We thank you again for joining us today. Until we meet next time, we wish all of you the best of success. Take care, everyone.